John Maher here. It is Thursday, 11th of June 2026, and this is your Grass10 update on the dairy edge. Well, I suppose last week growth was above normal, but this week is a little different, to put it mildly. Some paddocks are not performing well, those that are particularly stemmy. I've come across farms behind in fertilizer application. Some low cover farms are struggling with growth rate, and I suppose there are some farms who are struggling with the weather because they're just exposed to it depending on the part of the country. Or on the other hand, then some paddocks are growing very well, and these are doing okay and holding the grass quality to a reasonable state, I suppose. There are some farms then who are very, very tight on grass, to put it mildly, but they have targeted grass quality and really gone after this by doing a lot of correction. So it's all there really, but for the record, the average farm cover was over 700 for the week gone by, with a grass supply of about 200 kilograms per livestock unit, or just above it there. Growth was about 70 and demand was about 60 per hectare. The diet was made up of 16 kilos of grass, 3 kilos of meal, with the average pre-grazing yield at about 1500, which the bottom line still remains too high, and it's not going to help the grass quality story. Dry matter is very, very variable depending on where you are in the country and rainfall. But look, for the record, this week they were 13 to 14% in Moore Park and Rye. And then you go across to the East Coast, like Grange and Johnston Castle, and they were, 18 to 20%. So, anyway, I suppose this is just the variability that we come across. And it's the same story with grass supply here now, right? So looking at the data then on grass supply, things are very, very mixed. In some parts of the country, grazing conditions are difficult due to rainfall. I've seen this myself down in Kerry and West Limerick and places. Other parts of the country could do with rain. Strange thing to say, but that's the reality of it. So then look at the grass supply story. Some farms are swamped in grass, and poor quality grass at that, and other farms are very tight on grass supply, largely due to poor growth, sometimes too high a stocking rate, but also doing a lot of cutting of every description now in terms of cutting. So, it just makes doing this podcast a little bit trickier now. But anyway, for the record, the predicted growth for the week ahead is about normal or just above it, but there's going to be huge variation there depending on what you're doing and on the weather. The level of grass supply is also going to influence growth. If the cover is low, you're going to grow a lesser amount. I've seen farms who have just cut everything out to an excessive degree, and they're going to have low growth rate as well. So, simply put, a third of farms are under target, a third of farms are about target, and a third of farms are over target. So start with those who are under target. About a third have about 140 to 5 per livestock unit, or an average farm cover less than 600. Now, some of these are correcting. Some of them are stocked too high, but they are behind, I suppose, and I suppose you just need to be aware of that. Another third of farms are well over 200 per livestock unit in terms of grass supply, and have an average farm cover closer to 800. And as a result, then, are grazing or asking the cows to graze 1,800 kilos. No matter what way you twist or turn that, the grass quality is in trouble there, right? So there are lots of different camps, and farms are in a lots of different groups when you look at the grass supply story. However, fundamentally, the grass quality is a challenge. And, the main reason for this is because largely that the pre-grazing yield is probably too high on most farms. However, there are a few things that are certainly required, irrespective of which group or camp you're in terms of grass supply. As I said, grass quality is a challenge, and it is the month of June, and that's what we're entering into, and has come with a bang. If you don't walk the farm every 4 or 5 days, this can go wrong very, very quickly, both ways, either run too short or end up with too much grass and too much of the wrong grass. Fertilizer application must be kept up to date. We have gone through a period of massive stemming. We've gone through a period of very, very high growth rates. This grass does not grow for free. And if you're behind in fertilizer, I've seen this happen, and the farm becomes exposed, and you get lower growth rates, poor quality grass, because the grass plant is stressed. So that must be kept up to date. And I'd say preferably with a compound fertilizer with sulfur in it. If you don't have a P allowance, then fair enough. We can use things like 19-0-15 plus sulfur, or 29-0-15 plus sulfur, or something with K and sulfur in it. The pre-grazing yield on most farms is just too high, and this is having an effect on grass quality. The surplus grass then needs to be diverted to silage. Now, I know the weather has been broken, and people are giving out to me about, how do we correct grass quality. The first thing is try to go to ryegrass. There is flexibility required here with trying to make surplus grass into bales. It's going to be difficult to get a spell of weather together to do what you normally would do. So to me, it's very much a smash and grab approach. Maybe cut down one evening, bale the next day, or bale the next morning, or maybe do it all in one day. The weather's forecast for most of the country is improved to the weekend, but we go to next Tuesday and we're turning a little bit unsettled again. I suppose the other thing to say is that the grazing covers beyond 1500 is going to have a negative effect on animal performance. They're going to produce less milk of lower protein. The cleanout is going to be poor, grass recovery is going to be poor for the next rotation, and the quality is going to be poor as well. Just to keep that in mind, have come across, it depends on where you're set up, some farmers who decided who can do this. It's not for everyone, but they're obviously doing a level of surplus grass being diverted to round bale silage. That's fine, or to pit silage, and that's fine. There is a level of mechanical correction going on, which sometimes is just necessary depending on the weather that you have. But some are diverting the worst quality grazing paddocks, topping up with fertilizer, and diverting them to second cut and grazing some of the second cut area. Now, it depends what you've done there with fertilizer as well, but it's just an idea for those who have access to size ground in the platform and may decide to swap out the worst and swap in the best. It might apply to some people who would have the access to this and then therefore would graze better quality grass. I suppose touching on the fertilizer story and following on, you need to keep up to date with it, preferably with a nitrogen plus K plus sulfur product. The sulfur application needs to be somewhere around 15 to 20 units out by early July. I admit heavier farms could do it a bit less. That's fine. Paddocks are cut for silage or surplus grass. Every 4 bales to the acre is about 1,000 gallons of slurry to go back to balance for P and K. And we have a chance then to spread lime on these as well, especially the weather is at the moment with the mix of wet and dry. So that's a little bit on the fertilizer side and nutrient side. The weed populations, I suppose, then in reseeds have taken a fair jump in the last week for those who have sown in late April, early May. The best time to control weeds is at the early stage in reseed. If that dock plant gets a root on it, it's very, very hard to kill. You're trying to target the post-emergent herbicide when the average dock is about the €2 coin size. You'll have some smaller, some bigger, but that's about the guide. And I suppose the clover say sprays need to be used there when the clover plant is really at the tree leaf stage, just to keep that in mind, if that's okay. The temptation can be to go a little bit early when the docks are not fully mature or when the clover's not mature enough either. Right, so to our feature farmer this week is my colleague Ellen Fitzpatrick, who runs the dairy calf to beef system in Johnstown Castle. There was an open day on there during the week, and we were doing down things there in terms of grazing demo and focus a bit on the lime story. But anyway, I suppose this piece relates to people with the heifers here, because you're kind of similar animal types here, but in terms of replacement heifers, in terms of weights and all that. But anyway, very quickly, the average farm cover was about 623 on this farm, growing 64, eating about 40, pre-grazing yield around 1,500. To keep quality grass in front of the cattle, about 70% of the ground is out for short-term silage. That needs to be made into bales, but they're going to go for the quick window on this one. And I suppose the weekend, Friday, Saturday will probably work there. Some of the areas diverted for reseeding, which will take out another 7% of the farm, and demand will also increase as the calves are going to be added to the groups as well, I suppose. And now they don't eat very much, but they do bring up the stock rate a bit and increase the demand. And the ryegrass swards, which have no clover in them, are getting about 16 units per acre of nitrogen. Now, the study looks at dairy calf to beef heifers grazing ryegrass, clover ryegrass swards, and multi-species. They're averaging just over 400 kilograms of live weight for all the groups for the 10th of June, and the best performing group are the white clover ryegrass grouping, right, in terms of average daily gain. So that's a quick story of those there. But look, talking to Ellen at the open day and doing the bits and pieces that are relevant to grazing management, couldn't walk the farm often enough, and trying to keep grass quality good in front of the cattle is a challenge, and we all know that. But I suppose the more often we walk, the luckier we get in terms of grazing the right grass. If you'd like to hear more from the Grass10 team, subscribe to the weekly Grass10 newsletter, which is available on the Grass10 page on the Teagasc public website, and the link to the newsletter is also available in the description of this podcast. We'd like to thank all those who support the Grass10 campaign: AIB, Grass10 Agro, Department of Agriculture, Food and Marine, FBD and the Farmers Journal. This has been your Grass10 update, and I will talk to you all next week.